I did an article called "The Pentagon Inches Toward Letting AI Control Weapons" by Will Knight. Now, the article starts off talking about a simulation exercise that DARPA conducted in August 2020, where drones and robots were used by the military to find suspected terrorists near Seattle. The exercise's instructions were simple: to find and eliminate the enemy. The purpose was to test AI in a complex situation that no human could make good critical decisions in. Due to the exercise, along with other factors in the AI world, military planners, policymakers, and society had to now think about whether a person should make every decision about using lethal force. The issue directly relates to what we have discussed in class this week, including whether drone warfare and cyber warfare are ethical. One of the big dilemmas involved here is when we should and should not and can and cannot take a human life, as well as who the decision is up to. Knight forgoes the discussion of this moral dilemma and mostly focuses on the facts, stating arguments and opinions on what should be done, but not the moral implications of why. Knight does stay neutral throughout the article, presenting quotes and arguments from both sides of the issue. The side arguing against AI use in the military has many reasons to do so. First, as Professor Tegmark says, it may be risky to develop such cheap systems that can then easily fall into enemy hands. Although Tegmark seems to be applying Green's prevention risk principle to the question, it may be a great approach to take, considering many lives will be changed given the outcomes of these debates. The Worry Group also argues that the introduction of AI on too many levels may result in humans not even being needed for some of these operations. In those cases, what if the autonomous system makes a mistake? What if it sees clothing that looks similar to the enemy uniform and attacks a civilian? Who will be standing by the kill switch all day? On the other hand, the pro-AI use group argues that we have already been using AI in some military weapons successfully for decades. An example of this is autonomous guided missiles that can identify and eliminate enemies in a given area. AI can also handle complex situations that a human team could never keep up with, which may come in handy in the age of algorithmic warfare. On the topic of the article's credibility, it was written in May 2021 by Will Knight, a senior writer for Wired magazine, covering events that happened about 9 months earlier. Wired is known to be a central neutral news source, and given all the information on Will Knight, the article does seem to have veracity. The article does not propose any policy changes, but Knight does mention the National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence, a group that was created by Congress that recommends the US resist calls for an international ban on development of autonomous weapons. As far as my opinion goes on this article, I mostly agree with the reasons against the use of AI in the military because I believe we have not perfected enough to deploy in such important tasks that involve human lives. I understand the idea of using AI with human oversight and agree that it may prove very helpful in some complex situations, so I am for further research in the area. The next article I chose was by Audrey Cronin called "Designing Lethal Technologies," and I believe it complements the previous one well. In it, she briefly summarizes law, ethics, and emerging military technologies by George Lucas. Like Knight, Cronin also talks about both sides of the debate, stating that the proponents of lethal autonomous weapon systems or laws better identify targets, spare civilians, make attacks more discriminate, and reduce overall suffering. Cronin goes on to mention that opponents of laws believe that they damage human dignity, make war more likely, and could escape human control. This article differs from the previous one in the sense that it also shows a specific use of the autonomous systems in the current day warfare in Ukraine. Specifically, Cronin talks about NAMO M72 and how it's dangerous to use for a person because they have to get close enough to the target to use the missile shooter, but it's very usable when a drone flies it. Once again, the article stays mostly neutral, presents arguments from both sides. However, it does present a specific case where AI military weapon was helpful, but does not present a specific case where it was not helpful. The article was published in the Science magazine, found through the UCSB library website. Being the Trustees Professor of Security and Technology, as well as the Director of the Institute of Politics and Strategy at Carnegie Mellon University, Audrey Cronin seems to be a reliable author, and we can trust the source. The paper brings up 3 ethical problems of AI warfare: inadvertent escalation, where autonomous interactions spiral out of control, proliferation, where AI tools replace human beings and sophisticated cyber operations become widely accessible, and attribution, where broader participation makes it much harder to identify nefarious actors. But Cronin goes no further than mentioning these ethical concerns and does not exactly describe them in detail. On the topic of my opinion about this article, I agree with the points that Cronin brings up from both sides of the debate, and I do agree that autonomous weaponry will more likely lead to more tensions and perhaps increased chances of war. I do disagree with the four AI groups point that AI spares civilians. I think that's slightly of a faulty argument to make in this situation. From a utilitarian point of view, trying to do the greatest good for the greatest number of people is the way to go. However, this is also an area where it's very difficult to estimate the outcome of each decision, since now an AI and a human decision maker are both involved in the process, and both can be faulty. From the point of view of the virtue ethics framework, if we are to proceed further in this direction, we must be very careful of how to handle the virtues of the designers of the AI systems, as well as the morals and ethical codes of the human overseers of the AI missions at hand. These individuals must display traits like honesty, integrity, transparency, among many other traits that are difficult to pinpoint. As a society, we have yet to come up to a conclusion to this debate. Like us, the policymakers in power at this moment seem to struggle to keep up. Innovation happens faster than new ethical codes and laws are being developed, and we have yet to see what will come of this aggressive technological research and expansion.